Welcome, CEOs. We are 7 Streams for Success here to give you all the gems on how to help you transition out of corporate into being a CEO. So today we are going to be talking about the basics. We're going to start from the ABCs of how to help you transition. Everybody tells you all the time that it's really important that you get a job, that you have additional streams of income, and they tell you how to do all of the things, but nobody really tells you how to balance those things, and nobody also tells you how to transition from your regular 9 to 5 to now just running your business every day. So I am here to help you with all of the things that nobody told you, right? There's a million videos on how to get your EIN and your license and register with your state and all of these other things that you need to do to be a business owner, right? Which is great. Perfect, right? And we're going to cover those too. But there's lots of things that people don't tell you, and we're going to cover all of those. So stay tuned. All right, so one of the first things you need to do when you decide that you either want to transition out of corporate or you just want to create additional streams of income while you're still in corporate and maybe additionally leave at some point in time. You never know, right? So you'll have to retire, so maybe your retirement is just a little bit earlier than others. So with that in mind, you have to really define your freedom goals, right? And what that means is, what is your idea of freedom, right? Because your idea of freedom is going to be completely different than other people's idea of freedom. So you want to make sure that when you are deciding what businesses you want to have, what additional streams of income you want to create, that you are setting it up based on the way you want to live your life. I have set up all of my businesses solely based on the way I want to live my life in the future, right? I don't want to have a business where, for example, I have a brick and mortar, right? Because then that means I have to be here to run the brick and mortar until I can afford to hire people. And then once I hire people, I still have to come back and check on it, right? So if I want to be a nomad, which I'm going to be, okay, and I'm traveling the world internationally, maybe I don't have time to come back and check on my businesses, right? So that is not really a good business idea for me. But other people, especially depending on what your business is, that might not be the case, right? So really think about that. Really figure out what works for you, what you want to do, and what's going to be the best option for you and your family moving forward, right? And we don't mean just mean today. We mean a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What are the goals? What is the bigger picture behind what you want to do? All right, so let's really think about that. Let's figure that out. Let's really define that. Let's really get really niche to what you specifically want to do that's going to work for you and that's going to make you completely different than everybody else doing the same thing. Make sure your goals are clear, be very specific, and make sure they're achievable, right? So it's not that saying I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 50 is unachievable, right? But how are you going to get there? What are you going to do to set yourself up to be a millionaire by the time you're 50? Are you going to do that at your job? Do you make enough to be able to be a millionaire at your job by the time you're 50? If the goal is to retire by the time you're 50, do you make enough at your job to be able to retire by the time you're 50? If not, let's figure out, how we can do that. Let's really get specific. Let's be clear on what you want to do. Let's align it with all of your goals. And let's make sure everything is achievable, right? Because we don't set goals to not achieve them. We set goals to be able to say, all right, we check that off, we check that off, we check that off, right? So please make sure that you have an outline, when you are setting these goals on how to achieve them. The next thing you need to do with these goals, right, is separate them. You have short-term goals and you have long-term goals, right? So most of your short-term goals are all things that you're going to do while you're still working your job, right? Your long-term goals, ideally, are going to be things that you will do once you are done working your job. Now, that depends on how long you want to stay at your job and how long you want your transition period to be. I typically tell people, depending on what your bigger plan is, that your transition period can be anywhere from 180 days to 5 years, right? So it really just depends on what your goals are, what things you already have in motion, what obligations you already have. You want to keep all of those things in mind. So the reason why we're going to separate them, right, is because ideally your goals are going to serve as a roadmap. So you want to put all your short-term goals first, right? Because those are things that you need to achieve first on your roadmap. And then you're going to put all your long-term goals, of course, last. But you want to put them, everything should be in order of the way that you need to do it, right? Which is why it's called a roadmap, because you can't get to point Z until you pass A, B, C, D, E, F, you know? So make sure that you're putting these things in order. Create yourself a nice little roadmap for how you want this process to go, right? Because you can control this. This is totally up to you. This is not one of those situations where you're going to randomly get fired, even though you could, which is why your plan is going to be so important, or that you're just up and quitting your job. No, we are going to transition you safely out of your job, okay? So we're going to do this in the most high vibrational way possible. So ensuring that you're not backtracking and missing things on your road to transition is super important. Definitely make sure that you are doing things in order. So if there are certain things that need to happen first, go ahead and knock those off, even if they're harder, right? Those things up front might be a lot harder than some of the things that you do on the back end. But those short-term goals are going to be the ones that are most important, because those are things that are easy and those are things that are quick. You can go ahead and check those off the list. Okay, so you want to make sure all of your goals are trackable and measurable, right? Because you want to make sure that you are hitting them and that you're staying on track to have them completed. So for example, let's say one of your goals is part of your research, right? You know you want to start a business. You think that you want to do soaps because you have an allergy and you think that you can make a better product. So researching is very, very, very time consuming. It's one of the most underrated parts of starting a business, right? A lot of people throw out a bunch of technicalities and legality things that are super important that you should be doing. But the research that you do at the very beginning, your idealization phase, is one of the most important parts of your business. When you are coming up with your ideas, you want to make sure that you're staying on track, kind of like a project management scenario. I set up all my goals, kind of how a project manager does, right? There's a start, there's a first point, there's a second point, maybe there's a third point, and there's an end point, right? So it's not just goal and then check when you got it done, right? There's little things that you kind of got to do up until that point to keep you on track for something, right? So for example, let's say one of your goals is getting a business banking account, right? There are some banks where you could go in and get a banking account that day, but there's also prep that you need to do before you go in the bank, right? There's certain documents that you need to have either printed or available for you to send it to them or for them to view. So that's part of the prep, right? So part of your goal could be, all right, get all of my prep done. And then the second part of your goal could be go to the bank. And the third part of the goal could be complete everything that they need you do. And then the fourth part of the goal could be making sure your account has $500 in it or something. So there are levels to the way that you can set your goals out, and you want to make sure that you're keeping track of those, right? Because let's say you go to the bank and there's a document that you're missing. Let's say they want a copy of your EIN and you didn't bring it for them. You want to make sure that, all right, you completed this one step, but this next step didn't get completed. That reminds you that you need to go back. That also reminds you where you are in the process on that step. So make sure you're keeping track of your goals. That's super important. And this is also something I feel like nobody really ever says. Make sure you are constantly adjusting your goals, right? Because what you thought worked 3 months ago might not work today. What you thought was a good idea a year ago might be really costly now. You know, what was a really great business idea a couple months ago might not be so great in the economy, you know, at this current state, or maybe even future state. So really keep that in mind when you are making your goals. Make sure that they are achievable, but make sure that they're constantly getting updated and changed. Make sure you're revisiting them to ensure that the goals are still something, one, that you want, okay, two, that you need, okay, because some goals you want, but do you need it? right? Like, I would love to have a plane right now. I want to be a pilot, right? I'm a drone pilot, but I want to be a real pilot, right? So, do I need to do that right now? Is that a goal that I really need to spend all of that money on right now? Maybe not, right? So I switched it to, get a guitar. That's a more feasible goal for me right now that still really excites me and still really makes me happy. So think about that, think about the bigger picture, think about all of the work and the time and the effort that goes into certain goals versus other goals. And that does not mean that that goal is not achievable, right? Or you should take that goal off of the list. But maybe instead of that being a short-term goal, it's a long-term goal. Maybe instead of that goal being something that you deem as important to do in the next 2 years, maybe you push it off to 5 years. So just keep that in mind. Always revisit your goals. Don't give up. You got this. So that's really all that I'm going to put in this video. We're definitely going to be dropping in a lot of other videos soon, so look out for those. We're definitely going to be outlining how you transition, what are the best ways to transition, but I thought that this would be a great intro video because goals and defining them are super important. You'll be surprised how many people leave their job with no outlined goals, no roadmap on what they're going to do to get to success. And don't get me wrong, it is great to jump and leap, I think that is amazing. I think being confident in everything that you're doing is super important, but you want to have a plan too, right? You don't want to be a dumb frog, you want to be a smart frog, right? We don't want to be the frogger that gets hit. We want to be the frogger that makes it across, okay? So make sure that you're planning and make sure you check out the rest of our videos. It was a pleasure, CEOs. Have a good night.